You need to sit down for this one, Lions fans, because Detroit just got hit with a one-injury update nobody wanted to hear again. Sam LaPorta, the heartbeat of this offense, the one man who makes Jared Goff's life easier on every single snap, is dealing with a hip injury at training camp. And Dan Campbell's answer about it should have every single person watching this a little bit nervous. But before we get into just how serious this actually is, and before we break down exactly what it means heading into that Week 1 showdown with the Saints, I need 30 seconds of your time. This channel, Detroit Scope, is closing in on 1,000 subscribers, and we are struggling to get there. If you're watching this video right now and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, we would genuinely appreciate it. It costs nothing, it takes 1 second, and it helps this channel keep bringing you Lions coverage like this. Okay, now let's get into it, because this is not just any injury story. This is Sam LaPorta, a guy walking into this season already trying to prove his body can hold up after a 2025 campaign that ended about as brutally as it possibly could have. LaPorta suffered a herniated disc in his back in Week 10 last year, an injury so serious that Dan Campbell described his chances of returning that season as very, very slim. He ended up on injured reserve, underwent back surgery in mid-November, and never played another down in 2025. He finished that shortened year with career-low numbers, 40 catches for 489 yards and 3 touchdowns in 9 games, a far cry from the Pro Bowl rookie season that put the league on notice. So when word broke that LaPorta got hit in the hip during a practice earlier this week and is now being held out, your stomach is allowed to drop a little. This is a guy whose body has already betrayed him once in the last 12 months. And now it's happening again, right as the calendar creeps towards September. Here's exactly what Dan Campbell said, because the wording matters more than almost anything else in this entire story. Campbell told reporters that LaPorta got hit in the hip a few nights before and that it flared up. He called it a little aggravated, but insisted the team feels good about him for the long haul. And then, when a reporter pushed him on whether this thing could carry into the regular season, into that all-important opener, Campbell said it plainly. I feel like we'll be okay, but I don't know. Read that again. I don't know. That is not the answer of a coach who is confident his star tight end is jogging out of that tunnel on September 13th against New Orleans. That is the answer of a coach who genuinely does not have a firm timeline yet. And when the head coach of the Detroit Lions tells you flat out that he doesn't know, you shouldn't be pretending that you do either. Let's talk about why this actually matters, because some of you watching are going to say it's just a hip. He'll be fine. Calm down. And look, nobody wants to be the doom and gloom channel in the middle of August. But the numbers on Sam LaPorta are almost impossible to ignore once you actually sit with them. Last season, in the games LaPorta was healthy and in the lineup, the Detroit Lions were averaging over 31 points per game. That is a number that would have led the entire National Football League in scoring. Then LaPorta went down for those final 8 games, and Detroit's offense dropped to under 25 points a contest. That's a full touchdown less every single game, for 2 straight months of football. That's what one man being out of the lineup did to this offense. It wasn't just the touchdowns either. It was the third down conversions, the extra blocker on the edge, the safety valve for Jared Goff when nothing else was open downfield. Sam LaPorta isn't just a good tight end having a nice career. He might be the single most important non-quarterback on this entire roster when it comes to what makes this offense function at an elite level. And here's the part that's going to make some of you uncomfortable. This is happening at possibly the worst time, because this Lions offensive line is already sorting through its own questions up front, with Penei Sewell settling into left tackle and a rookie tackle learning on the job next to him. If you strip away the safety net at tight end on top of a line that's still finding its rhythm, you're asking Jared Goff to operate without the training wheels this offense has leaned on for years. Losing LaPorta, even for a stretch of games, genuinely changes what this offense is capable of doing on a weekly basis. Now here's where I want to give you a reason to actually breathe, because this is not last November all over again, and there's a real, tangible reason for that. Last year, when LaPorta went down, the Lions didn't have a true receiving option behind him at tight end. This year, that's not the case. Tyler Conklin is in the building. And from everything coming out of Allen Park, he looks like a legitimate weapon and not just a body filling a jersey. Conklin actually started training camp on the PUP list himself while working through his own injury, but has since been back in the mix, and when healthy, this is a guy who has strung together consistent seasons of 500 to 600 receiving yards at the position. That's not LaPorta-level production. Nobody's pretending it is. But it's a real, credible pass-catching threat at tight end, which is something this roster simply didn't have a last time LaPorta went down. Somebody has to be that contested catch, jump ball option near the goal line. and all signs point to Tesla getting that chance sooner than anybody expected heading into the year. And then there's Amon-Ra St. Brown, who honestly doesn't need any extra opportunity to already be one of the most productive receivers in the entire NFL. But if LaPorta is out, the targets are going to find their way to him even more than they already do. Defenses can put 2 guys on him, 3 guys on him. It genuinely doesn't seem to matter. Jared Goff trusts him in every single situation. Now, let's zoom out for a second, because Sam LaPorta isn't even the only name on this injury report, and this is where things start to look a little more concerning if you're looking at the whole picture. Cornerback Ennis Rakestraw is also banged up, exiting a recent practice with what's being described as a non-contact lower leg issue after already dealing with a shoulder scare in the preseason opener against Cincinnati. It's been a brutal camp for Rakestraw, who has struggled to string together healthy stretches since entering the league, and this latest setback couldn't come at a worse time as Detroit sorts out its cornerback room following Terrion Arnold's release. On defense as a whole, the secondary situation is starting to look like a genuine storyline to monitor. Both starting safeties, Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, opened training camp on the physically unable to perform list. Branch is working back from a torn Achilles suffered in early December, and Joseph is still managing a lingering knee injury that limited him to a shortened 2025 season. The encouraging news on Branch is that Dan Campbell has sounded genuinely optimistic, suggesting he could realistically begin practicing again in late training camp or early September, which would put him in position for an early season return. Kirby Joseph's situation is murkier. Campbell has said Joseph is on a similar recovery track, but the coaching staff has been careful not to promise he'll be ready for Week 1, treating his early availability as a bonus rather than an expectation. So here's where we actually stand, heading into that opener against New Orleans. You could be walking into Week 1 without your star tight end. You could be walking into Week 1 without your top corner depth option in Rakestraw. You could be walking into Week 1 without either of your starting safeties. That's a lot of red on the injury report for a team that plenty of national analysts have already pegged as a legitimate Super Bowl contender coming into this year. And look, this channel isn't going to pretend it's all fine. Detroit Scope is about giving it to you straight and straight up. This is a concerning stretch of training camp. Here's the silver lining though, and it's a real one. The schedule is working in Detroit's favor at the exact moment they need it to. The Lions open the season against a Saints team dealing with its own significant roster questions. If there was ever a game where you could afford to be a little short-handed on both sides of the ball, this is the one. If LaPorta has to sit that opener out, if Kirby Joseph isn't quite ready, this is about as soft a landing spot as this team could have asked for. If Dan Campbell and this coaching staff are being smart about it, and everything about this program suggests they are, this is exactly the kind of low-stakes opening stretch where you rest a guy like LaPorta and bring him back at full strength for the games that are actually going to decide this season. And let's talk about what this all means for the front office, because this injury history isn't just a football story, it's a business story too. Sam LaPorta is entering the final year of his rookie contract, and this hip injury, coming right on the heels of season-ending back surgery, is going to be a real conversation inside that building. Do you extend a tight end who has now dealt with 2 significant injuries in as many years, even one as talented as LaPorta, especially after Detroit already made its splash extension this summer by locking up running back Jahmyr Gibbs to a record-setting deal that made him the highest-paid running back in NFL history? Nobody is saying LaPorta isn't worth paying. This is a genuinely elite talent as both a blocker and a receiver. But every single injury adds a little more weight to that decision. So where does that leave you? The Lions fans sitting here trying to figure out how worried to actually be. Here's the honest answer. This is not last November. This is not being described as a season-ending situation, at least not based on anything coming out of Allen Park right now. But it's also not nothing. When your own head coach tells you flat out that he doesn't know if his best offensive weapon will be ready for the opener, you don't get to pretend that's a small deal. The good news is depth. Tyler Conklin gives you a real answer at tight end that didn't exist a year ago. Isaac Tesla gives you a red zone weapon who might be ready to step into a real role months ahead of schedule. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown no matter who's drawing coverage away from him. And the schedule, mercifully, is giving this team the softest possible landing spot to manage all of this the right way instead of rushing anybody back before they are truly ready. Before I let you go, I need you to do 2 things for me. First, drop a comment right now and tell me what you actually think. Do you trust Tyler Conklin and Isaac Tesla to hold this offense together if Sam LaPorta has to miss real time? Or is this the injury that finally derails Detroit's Super Bowl window before it even gets started? I read every single comment, and I want to know where you stand. Second, and I promise this is the last time I'm going to ask, We are chasing 1,000 subscribers on this channel, and every single one of you watching right now can help get us there. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like button on your way out, and share this video with one other Lions fan who needs to hear this update before kickoff. This channel exists because of you, and we would love your help reaching that next milestone. That's where things stand right now out of Allen Park. We'll be all over this story as more updates come in on Sam LaPorta, on Kirby Joseph, on Brian Branch, and on every single move this coaching staff makes heading into that Saints game. Stay locked in, and as always, go Lions.